The wind tore through the busy morning streets like a warning, sharp and merciless, sweeping dust and cold air around the towering buildings. At the edge of a crowded sidewalk, where people rushed past without looking, a trembling little boy stood barefoot, clutching something wrapped in an old thin towel. His lips were blue, his breath shaky. When he finally gathered the courage to speak, his small voice cracked through the noise like a plea from a forgotten world. "Sir, my baby sister is freezing." That moment stopped time. And it stopped the heart of the man who heard it, the man everyone feared, admired, or whispered about. The man known as the Steel CEO, Rael Verdun. If you believe in kindness, hope, and second chances, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to RW Insights. Your support helps keep stories of humanity alive. The morning sun had barely risen, casting long shadows between the skyscrapers as Rael walked toward his car, reviewing numbers on his tablet. His assistant followed closely behind, listing appointments, mergers, and shareholders, things that usually consumed every ounce of Rael's attention. But the soft, shaking voice of that child broke through it all. Rael lifted his gaze, expecting to see some sort of scam, some trick he had been warned about too many times. Instead, he saw a boy no older than 7, with torn clothes, shaking violently, holding a tiny bundled figure pressed to his chest as if sheer will could keep her warm. For the first time in years, Rael felt something unfamiliar, fear. Not for himself, but for them. He stepped forward, his breath catching as he saw the little girl's pale skin and nearly still body. Her tiny fingers were turning purple. The boy looked up with wide, desperate eyes that had seen far more pain than a child ever should. He whispered again, barely audible, "Please, she won't wake up." Rael didn't think. He didn't calculate costs, risks, or consequences as he usually did. He took off his designer coat, the one people joked cost more than a month's salary at his own company, and wrapped both children inside it. The fabric swallowed them whole, finally blocking the merciless cold. The boy's shoulders sagged with relief, as if someone had lifted the sky off him. Without another word, Rael scooped the children into his arms and marched toward his car. His assistant tried to protest, to remind him of his schedule, to warn him about liability issues, but Rael silenced him with a single look. The car engine roared to life, and they sped toward the hospital, the city racing by in a blur. Inside the emergency room, the doctors rushed the little girl, whom the boy whispered was named Morenzi, into treatment. The boy, whose name was Arlo, refused to let go of her hand until Rael gently promised him that nothing bad would happen, not while he was there. Rael watched the medical staff work with practiced urgency, his chest tight. He had never felt so powerless, so terrified, not even during the toughest corporate battles. Something about the children cut through the fortress he had built around his life. As the hours passed, Rael learned their story. Their mother had died months ago, and their father, unable to handle the grief and burden, had disappeared. Arlo had been trying to take care of Morenzi alone, surviving on scraps, hiding in abandoned corners of the city. The cold snap the night before had nearly killed them. Rael listened, each word carving deeper into him. He thought about his own childhood, one of privilege, yes, but also one drowned in loneliness, raised by nannies and tutors in a mansion with echoing hallways. He remembered longing for warmth, not the kind from heaters or blankets, but the kind that came from being seen, valued, held. Looking at Arlo and Morenzi, he felt something awaken inside him. When the doctors finally said that Morenzi would be all right but needed rest, warmth, and proper care, Arlo broke into tears, silent tears, the kind children learn to cry when they've been ignored too often. Rael placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, promising gently that he wouldn't leave them. Arlo held his hand as if it were the last thing in the world anchoring him in place. In the days that followed, Rael did something no one in his world expected. He took the children into his own home, not the guest wing, not a temporary arrangement, but into the heart of his life. His mansion, once cold and quiet, now echoed with small footsteps and soft laughter. Arlo followed Rael everywhere, asking questions, offering help, trying desperately to repay kindness he didn't need to repay. Morenzi, growing stronger each day, began smiling at the staff, at the sunlight, at the smallest joys. Rael found himself leaving work early just to read stories to them, making sure they ate, making sure they felt what he hadn't felt growing up, belonging. But the world didn't easily accept sudden kindness. Rael's board questioned his decisions. Investors whispered that he was becoming soft. Even some reporters tried to twist his actions into a publicity stunt. Rael ignored them all. The children needed him, and he realized, perhaps for the first time, that he needed them too. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the garden in warm light, Arlo approached Rael with something clutched in his small hand. It was the old towel he had wrapped his sister in on that freezing day, torn and worn. He held it out with trembling fingers and said, "We don't need this anymore, because we're not freezing now. Not ever again, right?" Rael took the towel gently, his throat tight. He knelt down, pulled both children into his arms, and whispered a promise he intended to protect for the rest of his life. Not ever again. The story of how a feared CEO became the guardian of two abandoned children spread across the city, then across the country, inspiring people who had forgotten what compassion looked like. But to Rael, to Arlo, and to little Morenzi, none of that mattered. What mattered was the new sunrise each day, the meals shared, the warmth that no longer came from gowns or heaters, but from love. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to RW Insights. Your engagement helps these emotional stories reach more people who might need hope today. Special request: comment one word that describes how this story made you feel.